Well, welcome to another podcast from called Just Me. Today we're joined by Jan Cavelle, who's an author, a writer, and a speaker. And I would like to ask you, Jan. So, who are you? Obviously, we know who you are, but what is it you do? Because you've had an amazing career. So, please tell us.
I've had an extraordinary mix of a career, yes. But currently, you're absolutely right. I'm living my own personal dream, being a writer and author about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs, which is all so exciting. And I've got my first book coming out in April, which is called Scale for Success, and it's being published by Bloomsbury. And that's just a dream come true for me.
That's so fantastic. So, how did you get into? I mean, writing a book is one thing, but how did you get into the world of kind of entrepreneurialism?
Well, that goes back a long, long while, and stems from me being, like many people you talk about and meet. I felt I was a very odd one out as a child and teenager. Didn't fit in, didn't want to go the route of my contemporaries who were very much being educated and as I was supposed to be and brought up to make a very sort of upmarket marriage. Lots of them went to finishing school, and it was that
Right.
sort of strange, outdated era that I was in. And I hated it. I absolutely loathed it.
Wow.
I'd been a sickly child and got my head into books back then and read an awful lot of sort of rebellious literature, I guess, for a child of that background, from Catcher in the Rye to Huckleberry Finn to you name it.
Whoa.
So
Brilliant.
I didn't go down very well with my contemporaries or most of my teachers, challenging the status quo all the time. So when it came to jobs, it was equally the same problem because my friends went off to do a little bit of modelling or a little bit of cooking or secretarial. Well,
Mm.
secretarial college for me lasted a week, I think. Um,
I can imagine.
so, and while I did try and dabble at secretarial courses, because in the end, not secretarial courses, secretarial jobs in the end, because I went and got a speed writing course. The whole thing didn't really do it for me, and I
Right.
just decided that working for myself, allowed me the freedom to live my life. So I started being self-employed, doing anything that came my way. I mean, including, it must be said, in fairness, a bit of cooking, but I just hadn't done the posh cooking courses, so I had to bluff it. And flogging sandwiches around posh offices in Kensington. So it took in work, secretary, wine, selling wine I did for a while. And just, anything that kept me. Oh, I did book research. Again, with my head in books, that was fun doing some researching, working with somebody else doing some
Mm.
research and illustrations for books. That was sort of very, very, very much up my street. But anything that would keep me out of employment. Um,
Wow.
so that's where all the rot started, by doing that really, and it was just it was rebellion. I was a very bad employee, uh, so
That's
which was
fantastic.
fine. Of course, still the moment came when I'd, got married, had children, and ended up as a single mom, and very, very broke because I hadn't quite married the person I was expected to from that background. And so I was on income support, you name it, and really
Wow.
struggling with these two who were only sort of 8 and 5, if that,
Wow.
I think at the time, maybe about 7 and 4. And I thought, well, what on earth am I going to do now? Particularly if to keep a roof over their heads, and
Yeah.
I don't want to stay on income support forever. Um, so I thought, okay, I will go back to having a business of my own, and I'd done a bit of furniture with my ex-husband, but I didn't really know anything about it, and I certainly wasn't a furniture designer. But I've
Mm.
done a lot of sales, because I was used
Mm.
to nipping in, selling sandwiches or whatever. So I thought, well, I've got if I can find something I can sell from home,
Mm.
and look after kids at the same time while they're literally there. And that can be a real challenge. You have to really
Mm.
wing it to look after children while you're selling. And sort of I remember so often I'd be one of them would start screaming, and you have to jam out your hand over the receiver and go, "I'm
Mm.
so sorry, I've got an important call coming in from the States," and slam down the phone to go and look after whatever
Wow.
crisis. But anyway, I had this small shelf under the stairs, and a fax phone, and I started selling bits of furniture that were made locally,
Wow.
in a similar way to I'd done with my ex. And
Wow.
slowly the thing took off, through sheer, probably bloody-mindedness again, excuse my French. But, I needed to feed those children. So I was determined to make a go of it. And over a few years' time, it built up to be a manufacturing business in its own right, and to a sort
Whoa.
of multi-million pound mark, which
Whoa.
really was outrageous from the background it came from.
So it's almost like the cupboard under the stairs story, then, isn't
It
it?
was,
Really?
yeah, yeah.
Gosh. Wow. Sort of Harry Potter-esque. And funnily enough, your book is being published by Bloomsbury, so maybe there is
That's
that. That is where the link is. That's fantastic. So, I mean, so what have you learnt along the way? What have been your key lessons to today?
most of all, I think I finally learned, and it's been a long process, to be comfortable about who I am. Um,
Oh,
you know, as I say, there was all that rebellion against the sort
mm,
of background I came from. And I mean, even my voice, I tell you, when I first started selling,
mm,
I was taken on but briefly by an employment agency, and we were trained for phone selling, and it was all played back to you. I heard this voice, which was sort of rather deep and pretty posh, coming back. And I was like, I can't be that person. I cannot be that person. It's horrendous.
that's
And
brilliant.
it still does my head in to this day. But that's part of who I am.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And I'm not trying to be anybody else at long last. It's taken me a long time.
That's amazing, and it's interesting. So, so go back to that because that rebellion kind of comes up a number of times. So, where does that come from? Because that's fascinating. What were you rebelling against? I mean, the lifestyle, the kind of life that you had.
Lots of things, actually. I mean, I think partly I was rebelling against my mother, because my family was fairly dysfunctional, and she very much ruled on the conditional love sort of thing. So she would, say, go to your room until you've agreed with whatever I say. You can't come out again. So I
Wow.
wouldn't come out again. Um, and that set in very early, which probably didn't endear me. But I wasn't going to play. I wasn't going to engage.
Wow.
And then school, I didn't fit in because I'd been very sickly as a child, and sort of nearly hadn't majored in things. And so my
Wow.
parents sensibly sent me to a really sporty prep school to start off with, which only meant I was the only one who was ill and in the sun, and again didn't fit in. And then this very posh senior school, where, as I say, they were off to finishing school and things, and I was my head in my books, and I was a
Mm,
huge fan of Martin Luther King and devastated,
wow.
over that,
Wow.
and all sorts of things, and campaigning, for equality and stuff, and which talk about bucking the trend. I mean, that lot
Hmm.
were all pro Eden, not pal, and I couldn't stand it. I didn't like it. It wasn't nice like the people in my books were. It wasn't fair to the
Wow.
human race.
Wow. I love that key lesson that you said about, being comfortable with who I am. I mean, that's such a huge thing, isn't it? And I think it's something we so underestimate, don't we, of what does it feel like to be Jan? What does it feel like to be Sid? And really sort of understanding and getting to that. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think it's really the key to, if not happiness, certainly contentment.
Mm. Mm,
Um,
definitely.
you know,
Yeah,
really
definitely.
crucial.
So what and who has helped you along the way? I mean, are there any kind of, I mean, you mentioned Martin Luther King there, and is there anyone kind of personally that sort of helped you, mentored you, coached you?
Not really on the whole. Mostly because certainly in the early days I didn't have any contacts. And I was also left over from all that, albeit I was feisty and fighting. But equally, of course, underneath, I was really insecure. Sort of asking people's help was a fairly dangerous thing to do,
Mm.
for young me, because, they would find out how fraudulent I was. I mean, I remember at a business awards do, the first award I won came with 6 sessions of quite high powered business coaching. And, I looked this lady up and she had a first in Russian and something, and psychology, that's right, from Oxford. And, I was just terrified and thought,
Wow.
I can't talk to somebody like that. I can't relate to somebody like that. I haven't got the education. I don't know what I'm doing. She's probably going to take my award away.
Wow.
So I was very resistant, learning made me feel worse about how much I didn't know for a long time. Um,
Wow.
it's in the later years where I've got so excited about it. So I only went to sort of business schools and things after I'd scaled the business up. Well,
Wow.
not business schools, but joined entrepreneurs clubs, and actually went on courses of high flying entrepreneurs. But it was only when I got there.
That's amazing. I can't stop smiling. I just love this story. And the thing is, so would you say that in your early days, I mean, I get the sort of the young children and it's that kind of desire to keep a roof over your head. So what else was there? I mean, obviously I get that the need to survive, but was there something that kept driving you? Where was the fire in you?
I mean, I think, well, it did come from them. I mean, I was a very
Mm,
passionate mom, and they didn't, because it was a messy divorce and my family didn't behave very well. They didn't have anybody else, quite literally. So I mean, it was just down to me. And again, I'd had that childhood. I mean, while you could say it was, my relationship with my mother was, and my resistance and resilience to her was
mm.
bad in some ways, but it was also good in some ways, because it did make me very much faced with an adversity. To hell with that, I'm going to keep going. In many ways, I was happier with challenges than I was with success.
But that can send you either way, can't it? Because I mean, I love your kind of sense of survival and just sheer bloody mindedness. I think it's amazing. But I mean, for some people, it can completely devastate them, can't it?
Yeah.
And send them the other way.
Absolutely. I mean, it was very, very touch and go. I stored it up. I had, sort of mental wobbles and depression and things much
Mm,
later on. But I had to
mm.
be successful, and I had to see the kids all right first, almost. I mean, that's the subconscious, of course. But I've heard that's quite common, sort of reading about it since, that you have that, you just sort of allow yourself to let go when it's okay to let go.
Yeah, it's interesting because you look at post-traumatic stress disorders, and a lot of people associate them with kind of military, whatever.
Mm,
But actually, when you read into them, its prevalence within all of us really just depends on where that trauma starts and all the rest of it. Gosh. So what obstacles would you say have hindered and helped you along the way?
as I say, my dysfunctional family and surviving that both hindered and helped. Um,
Mm,
because they made me resilient and sort of determined to swim, albeit in a rather
mm.
ungainly manner. Um, but
Love that.
um, I mean, it obviously left me with a huge lack of self-love for a very long time, and
Wow.
that makes everything difficult in life, actually. And I think, I mean,
Yeah.
it made being an entrepreneur very difficult, because
Mm,
you have to have that confidence, and also you have to be able to take time to look after yourself. I mean, in the end, I burnt out totally because I didn't
mm,
think of myself as a asset for company to look after, because it wasn't.
mm,
That was selfish, and self-love was a desperately bad thing, was how I'd reasoned by that time.
mm.
Because it was outrageously selfish and you should always give to others. But actually it was fatal, because you can't really do things for others unless you look after yourself. So
Yeah.
so it was a tough lesson to learn too.
so what keeps you going when things get tough? Because I mean, they still get tough, don't they? I mean, we all have our good days, bad days.
No, I mean, I still have my, and probably will to my deathbed, have my be-minded streak of I will keep going, whatever. But
Brilliant.
I'm very, very lucky to have gone back to writing. For a long time, I loved the business and I was very
Mm,
happy there. But in my latter years, it was sheer misery. I didn't want to be there and I was falling to bits and didn't know what to do about it. One of the things I did at that point was applied to write for a digital magazine online called Real Business,
mm.
and they started taking articles from me. Um, and that was my
Wow.
salvation in the latter years. It was my
Wow.
happy times of the week. And I find now, if I'm writing, I get into such a flow, literally
Mm.
the stage of, that, probably the house could burn down around me. I don't notice.
But
We
that's
hope it
so
doesn't.
wonderful to find that
Yeah,
that
it's lovely.
solace in the writing. So what is it about the writing that you love? I mean, you mentioned flow and things, but what is it that it gives you?
Ooh, um, challenge. I mean, I'm
Brilliant.
also, it's a constant when I think, look back and see something I've done wrong, or when somebody says I don't like that, or whatever, I'm devastated. But it keeps me stimulated. It makes me feel alive, stretches my mental state, but it just feels the right thing to do,
Oh,
for
wow,
me.
lovely. Oh, lovely. And what piece of advice would you, if you could go back to your younger self now, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say don't look at other people are doing. Concentrate
Wow.
on what you're doing, because you can't read other people anyway most of the time, or know why they're doing what they're doing, or whether they're genuinely what they appear to be
Mm.
doing on the surface or anything else. And it's an absolute waste of time. You've got your life and you should be concentrating on that. And equally, don't let your own insecurities stop you developing and learning.
And is there any other advice that you'd give to others? I mean, that's beautiful. I love that. I mean, because it's, yeah, focus on yourself. But it's difficult, isn't it, not to keep looking around? And I think in this day and age, with social media and all of
Mm.
that kind of social mirroring, God, I mean, I'm glad I'm in my 50s now and not in my kind of teens. Um, so would you give that same advice to kind of other people?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more important than ever now,
Mm,
because life's just too precious to waste.
yeah,
And on that basis, I think my other piece of advice would be, if something's not working for you, change it.
mm,
Change is very
oh,
scary. We put off change because it's better to keep going at something, and it feels safer. But actually, it can be the wrong thing to do. Change is not a bad thing. If something doesn't work, change it. Make most of your life.
wow, wow. And what advice would you give? I mean, your the book that's coming out is called Scale for Success. And is it, I mean, is it full of advice for kind of entrepreneurs in terms of thinking and things to do?
It is, yeah. I mean, it takes the readers from a sort of journey of all the different aspects. Hopefully, well, not all the different aspects because it's only one book, but sort of major aspects of growing a business, from sort of sales and marketing, from getting your vision to
Mm,
um, financing, to the sort of key parts, so that somebody can either read the lot, or pick it up if they're struggling on one particular bit. And I'm been joined by, and really I'm sort of collating um, fantastic stories and fantastic information from entrepreneurs. I've got worked with one entrepreneur per topic as such, so there are 30
wow.
others involved, and they're just amazing people.
How brilliant is that? And what would you say is the kind of key? I mean, I love your thing about, things aren't working, kind of change it. But what is What advice would you give to kind of somebody who's thinking about starting their own business? Maybe they're young, I don't know, at 13, 14.
Do it. I mean, absolutely do it.
Really?
Don't hesitate for a moment. There's a great bloke. I don't know if you've come across him, Sid, called Simon Payne,
No.
of the Pop Up Business School.
Oh,
And
yes.
yes,
Yeah.
I love his work, because he says, if you've got one customer, you've got a business.
Oh, lovely.
And it's true. I think businesses become over mystified. And that old principle that I used of, well, get on with it, do a bit of this and a bit of that, and get an income going, is more important than ever actually at this moment in time, because it's a form of recession proofing yourself. The more you can turn your head to doing different things, the more you are safer and able to support yourself through whatever comes next.
And there are more SME businesses in the UK than any other form of businesses, and they are the biggest contributor, aren't they, to our economy? So, what legacy would you like to leave behind?
My son lives in Australia now, and a lot of what I do is just for him to for because I want him to be proud of me as a person. Um,
Oh,
so sloppy, I know, but it is
not at all.
still.
That's really lovely. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you kind of look at the metrics of kind of successful businesses, and everyone sort of talks about money and kind of market share and growth and profit. And I can't think of many business people who must have gone to their deathbed kind of looking at their balance sheet. They must have looked at
No.
their personal life and their family, mustn't they? Because that's what we are, isn't it? That connection. That's a lovely legacy.
Mm. Definitely, definitely. And I know he takes self-development very seriously. And I don't want him to remember me, as you say, for a figure on a balance sheet, or
Mm.
some sort of tangible achievement. I want him to see that I've done my best, I guess.
Oh, that's really lovely. That's so nice. And if you could, I mean, I'm going to throw in an extra question here only because I find you fascinating. Is that what would you like to change about the world? I know it's a big question, but
Mm, yes. What would I like to change about? Well, obviously, in this day and age, I'd like COVID to be getting under control.
mm,
Um, I'd like the effects of social media on people, individual. Oh, goodness, I could talk about this one for ages. I'd
mm,
like people to get the effects of social media under control so that people aren't racked by horrors every.
mm, mm.
I mean, I go back to the books of my childhood, probably all the things I want are way oversimplified and are never going to happen. But I'd love there to be peace and no wars, and
Mm.
people to treat each other decently.
Oh, it's just such a beautiful universal belief, isn't it? And I hope that too. I share that with you, and it takes that little thing, isn't it? And I love that legacy of you saying, being proud of who you are, and you did your best, and I love that. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think if we all could be the best version of ourselves and do that every day,
Yeah,
then I think the world would be a better place because we would be kinder, I think, to ourselves to start with, but then that manifests itself in kindness to others, doesn't it?
definitely, definitely. And I didn't see the connection between the two for a long time, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Jan, brilliant. I always knew when we spoke a few weeks ago it was just going to be an awesome interview or podcast, and it has been. It's just been amazing. Honestly, I love your insight. I love your journey. I love your story, and thank you so much.
My pleasure.